Okay, let's quickly talk about choosing instruments to trade. And in fact, we're going to look at one particular aspect of choosing instruments, and that is the cost of trading that instrument. So here we are on pound US dollar, and we can see, if I just move the chart, the spread is currently 0.3. Now, I don't trade with this broker. This is just the data feed that I use. But that's actually pretty close to my normal spread. So mine's usually 0.1 to 0.4 on pound US dollar, and that's on an ECN account. If that was on a STP account, that would probably be sort of 1 to 1.4 pips. But anyway, if on Forex pairs, let's assume that we're using, this is 20 pip grid distance, okay? So when we place a trade, then we're basically buying from one and then closing at the other, or obviously selling if we're going the other way. So we're aiming to make 20 pips sort of each time. That's how this is going to work. We need to factor in the spread then, because the amount of spread we pay is going to affect how difficult it is and how expensive it is for us to actually do this. So we have a look at the current candle. Obviously, I'm sure you know how this works. If I was to press buy right now, I don't get in at this price here. I'll get in up here somewhere at whatever the spread is. So just for an easy illustration, if I press buy now, I might get in, let's say the spread is 2, I would actually get in here. Okay, so what that means then, just move this up. What that means then is if we've got to go 20 pips, what was a 2 pip spread? Let me get rid of this one. Drag this over. If we put, I'm just going to line this up. Sorry, one sec. If we line this up with where price is right now, if I was to press buy, okay, I would obviously pay the spread and I would actually get in. This is how when the candle keeps moving. I would actually get in here and I would still have to exit at my line. So I now then have just lost sort of 2 pips to the broker. I would only have 18 pips. Obviously, if I've paid 2, I've only got 18 up to the line now, okay? That's one problem. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, you could just hold through the line for an extra 2 pips. Yeah, you could, but the whole point is that these levels are turning points. So if you honestly believe that price is going to come up and then turn at this level, then you can't afford to hold for that extra 2 pips, can you? Because it's probably going to miss your TP, reverse, and then you're going to have to deal with it. So you probably still need to exit at this level, okay? In which case you just lost your spread to the broker. Now that's fine, that's a cost of trading. You had a 20 pip TP, you're given 2 pips to the broker, so what? It's a cost of trading. On some pairs, that's going to be much greater. On some pairs, it can be like 5 pips or 7 pips. And this is when it starts to get a bit silly, because at what point is it not worth it anymore? At what point are you just giving loads to the broker? And for example, Aussie dollar pairs and New Zealand pairs, especially around 10 p.m. UK, which is the New York close, the spreads will hit, and I'm not joking, 40 pips, okay? So you could be in a situation where you're potentially paying 40 pips of spread to the broker to try and make a 20 pip profit, which is just crazy. So that clearly doesn't work. Now, you want to avoid trading around the New York close like a plague, okay? Let me just budge this up to the current price. In fact, no, I'll do this example. So the other example is that you have pending orders set. Now, for you to set pending orders, the way it works is obviously this is a bullish candle, and let's assume this is a buy example. So let's assume that you set a buy stop here, and again, you just go in for 20 pips. Well, the bid price is right here, but the ask price might actually have just hit, in which case you've still paid the same spread, 2 pips, you've just already paid it. It would look something like this. Now, in that case, you actually still catch the full 20 pips. However, you needed the market to move 22 in order to make your 20. So again, the bigger the spread is, the harder this becomes. If you're trading an instrument that's got like a 5 or a 7 or a 10 or some crazy spread, to make 20 pips, you still have to make the 20 plus the spread. You're making life harder for yourself. And you're essentially still giving a massive chunk to the broker, because in this example, it's 6.6. So let's imagine this is like Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar, and it's a couple of minutes before rollover and the spread started to go crazy. Or a news event is happening and the spread has gone really wide, okay? This is a typical scenario. See, there's news events everywhere and the spread obviously goes wider. In that case then, when you're triggered in, this is what actually happens, okay, is you end up making a load more pips, but just giving all the extra pips to the broker. So if this did hit your TP, if this is how it played out, you actually made 26.6 pips, but gave 6.6 straight to the broker. It's in his pocket. And all that extra work you did, you didn't get paid anything else for it. So it's important then that when you choose what you're going to trade, you pick instruments that have lower spreads, that are more stable on news, and that don't go crazy around the rollover period. Because even stuff like pound US dollar, euro US dollar, stuff that's really stable and really cheap, the spread can still get to like, I don't know, I've seen it at 5 to 7 pips on average, sort of right around the New York close, and on news events if it's a pretty big news event. So you've got to be aware of that, because all that's going to happen is you give all that extra movement, all those extra pips that you've captured, you know, to the broker essentially. So you want to pick the cheapest stuff to trade. Now US 30 is actually particularly good. US 30, the spread hardly deviates at all at my broker. It's typically 1 to 2 points. And actually on US 30, don't forget, you're not aiming for 20. On US 30, you're aiming for 50. So out of every 50-point trade, you're only losing 2 points on average. Whereas in Forex, you're probably losing 2 points on a 20-point trade. So Forex is literally twice as expensive to trade as US 30. Now, I'm not saying don't trade Forex. You absolutely should, because Forex is easier to trade, I find, and there's much more variety. The pairs, you know, they've all got their own sort of personalities, their own behaviors. You can adapt the strategy endlessly to Forex. So you definitely should trade it. This is just a warning to sort of consider the spread before you just randomly pick a pair. If your favorite pair to trade is something with Aussie dollar or New Zealand dollar, you will have extra challenges compared to if you didn't trade that, okay? Because there's higher spread to pay, basically. Okay, in this video, we're going to talk about the price differences between TradingView and brokers. So this is a question I get asked a lot, and I'm just going to sort of point out what it is that they're talking about and how to deal with it. So here I have 3 different MT5s open. Okay, I've got IC Markets, Vantage, and Ox Securities, and I've just got one symbol in each of them. So I've got the Dow Jones, which is the US 30, okay? And I've also, in TradingView, you can see the price here as well. Now, if you just actually have a look at these prices, you'll notice that they're different, even though it's the same instrument and there is only one Dow Jones. In fact, what I'll do, I'll just take a screenshot so these numbers stop moving. Bear with me. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so that makes life easier. So on Ox Securities then, let's just take the bid price. We can see that it's 38,838, okay? Then on Vantage, it's 38,839. And on IC Markets, it's 38,794. IC Markets is, as usual, just miles away from other brokers. And on TradingView, 38,778, okay? Which is miles away from all of the brokers. So how is it possible then that an index, okay, like the Dow Jones, which only has one price, it's on the New York Stock Exchange, it literally only has one price and one data feed. How is it then that 4 different brokers are listed it at 4 different prices? The truth is the brokers are changing the price, okay? So these are what are called CFDs, contract for difference. And if you read the terms and conditions at the broker, what it essentially says is that the price of the CFD, which is what you're trading, does not have to follow the price of the underlying instrument. In other words, if the real price of the Dow Jones, and this could be any instrument, it could be pound US dollar, it could be absolutely anything. If the price of the underlying instrument changes, the price of the CFD, the thing that you're trading, does not necessarily have to follow it. In other words, the broker can kind of fudge the price and do whatever they want to screw you over, which, I mean, to me, I can't believe they get away with it, but you can see how blatantly they do it. If you literally do this yourself, open a couple of demo accounts for different brokers, put them side by side, look at the pricing differences. It's absolutely crazy. What's the lowest, I think, here is 38,778. And the highest is, it's this one, 38,839. So that is a difference between TradingView and Vantage. So that's highest to lowest of a massive 61 points. And even between the brokers, you have got, differences. These two are actually pretty close together. There's a huge difference between IC Markets. For some reason, IC Markets is always really far out from other brokers. I think they just take the mick a little bit more with their pricing. They're kind of well known for it. But yeah, anyway, this is something that people ask me all the time is, why is the price at my broker so different to your broker? Why does the price at my broker not match TradingView? Anyway, there's nothing that you can do about it in terms of getting brokers to change their prices. You can actually pay for a data feed from the New York Stock Exchange, which will give you the real price of the Dow Jones. It will be miles away from your broker's price. And even if you point this out to your broker, they just don't care. They're going to send you to the page on their website that basically shows the terms and conditions and says, we can change the price if we want to change the price. So how do you get around it then? Well, let's just start by getting rid of these. The first thing you sort of want to do is find the data feed for US 30, which is the closest to your broker, okay? So if you're on the little plus symbol and we want to just go to all, in fact, go to indices and just type, I can't type behind my microphone, US, and you can see all the US 30s have come up. In fact, we'll put in US 30. Not all of them will call it US 30, as you can see. Some of them will call it Dow Jones 30, Wall Street 30, it's all the same thing. But all of these data sources are available. Now, here's something crazy. Even if you were to choose like the IC Markets data feed, right? It usually still does not match the IC Markets MT5, and this applies to all the brokers. Like if you do the Black Bull one, it will still be different from the Black Bull MT5. It's just crazy. I think it's because they set up different data feeds, and just because of maybe the latency. There's a few milliseconds out, the prices are slightly different, whatever. There'll be technical reasons behind it, okay? It may even be that it's connected to different LPs via TradingView, who knows? So yeah, there's always going to be differences in pricing. What you need to do is, regardless of the broker that you actually trade with, is go through the data feeds, okay, and find the one that has the closest price to your broker. Now, I normally use like Capital.com. You can see that's the one that I'm on. It says the source here of the data, and even then it doesn't remain constant. So let's say, for example, there might be a difference now between my broker of, let's say, 5 points. In an hour's time it might be 10 points, then it might be 1 point, then it might be 20 points. It just shifts throughout the day. It's not really constant. Just try and find one that seems to be mostly close to your broker. And then the next question I sort of get, let me get rid of these lines. The next question that I get is, okay, I've drawn the levels on. I'm now ready to trade. On TradingView, price has reached the level, but on my broker it hasn't. What do I do? Well, here's the answer. You pick one, okay? So you either mark up all your levels on TradingView and you press buy and sell every time price reaches a level, or you go on your broker on MT5 and you draw your levels on there and you trade only from MT5. What you don't do is combine the two, because then you're going to totally mess everything up. Now, once you've entered your first trade on MT5, okay, at whatever price that is, if these are 50 points apart, then make sure that you enter them 50 points apart in MT5. So here, for example, this is at 38,800. The next one is at 38,850. So if price reaches this on TradingView and you press buy, okay, on your broker that might not be 38,800. In fact, I always guarantee it won't be, okay? It'll be something else, plus you'll pay the spread. So whatever that is, if you need to add another trade 50 points later, just add 50 points onto the price you paid at the broker. That's all you have to do. Don't worry about, oh, okay, now it doesn't line up with this one, now it doesn't line up with this one. It's not going to line up, because you're dealing with two totally different price feeds, because your broker is pricing things differently to TradingView, okay? Even if you're using your broker's feed in TradingView, the price is probably different. So you literally just pick one. You either trade just from MT5 or you trade just from TradingView. Now then, if you are actually trading in TradingView, as in you've got your account connected, it solves this problem. But there isn't massive choice of brokers, and the chances are, your broker isn't compatible with TradingView, in which case you'll have the issue I've just described. But anyway, that's just to make you aware of the pricing differences between brokers, and also between your broker and TradingView, and also how to solve that problem. Okay.